All right, we are live. Welcome back, everyone. There's your six cover. Appreciate you showing up. Today we have Ray Xering, and we also have Joel. Joel, tell us who you are and what channel you're on YouTube for those of you that may not know your great channel.
Right on. Thanks, guys. Happy to be with you. This is Joel Wise. I run the Precision Rifle Network YouTube channel.
Very nice. So the topic of the night, density, altitude.
That's correct.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter, Ray.
All right. The short answer is yes, it matters, and it matters a lot more than people realize. Now, here shortly, we're also going to have Kenneth E. with Desert Precision Gun Works on board, and let's go ahead and get started. So I don't know how many of you pay attention to density altitude, and I'm going to have to talk for the first 4 or 5 minutes here just to kind of segue into this topic. What got me thinking about this first and foremost is Joel over there, because Joel was at the Competition Dynamics match and he said something on the second day of the match talking about his density altitude changing throughout the course of the day. And specifically, I remembered you saying it was reading around 4,000. Now, what does that mean to you as a shooter? Well, we've got to understand what density altitude is first and foremost. So back in the day, somebody says air matters. Back in the day, we had our sniper data logbooks, and this was our Bible. Now, for you guys that are just getting into long-range shooting or maybe been doing it for a couple of years, I don't realize how much work this was, okay? Because we didn't have a Kestrel or anything that you could just input all of this or spin it up and boom, pops out your answer, or at least close enough.
I thought you were going to say something else.
What? I thought I was going to say something else.
I think it was going to pop out of something else.
So we had all of our logbooks, which was hard data cards on everything, and we needed to serialize this to the rifle that we were shooting. But as time went on, especially around 2000 or so, we started seeing other things that would make our life easier. This is an old school one. You guys can see how heat sunk this is, and it's actually all added up from rain and everything else. But this is an old MilDot Master. This has nothing to do with density altitude, but this was something we used quite heavily back in the day. And very similar to a slide rule, it could help you do things like estimate target distances based on your mil reading. And then you could also, on the backside, you had a pivot point, which I'm trying to do this backwards. You had a pivot point right here, and so you could dangle a string from it, and it would give you your angle. So it was a quick way to get your sine and cosine, and you could use that up on the front to help you out. Now, a little later on, we started seeing these density altitude cards, okay? Now, these were very specific to what caliber you were shooting, but there were huge differences in here. Just so you guys can see it, all of these green cards here, all of the green cards here that you see on the backside, these were for 175 grain gold medal match or M118 LR. All of these here, these were actually for the 168 gold medal match because everyone was shooting 308 back in the day. But what these were, they were air density or the density altitude cards. And it was very, very important. I'm going to give you guys a close-up of this, but what you did was you shot your rifle, you figured out the velocity for the temperature that you were at, and let's say you were at 2650. Then I'd have to choose the 26 or 25. Okay, there it is, 2650. And then the back side of the card is mil radians, and the front side of the card was MOA. So depending on what optic you were using, even back in these days, remember this was early 2000s, this was before any Kestrels other than millimeter Kestrels. What you would do is you would place that data into the slider here. And now what we could do is we could determine what the density altitude did for different situations. So give me just a second while I get this set up. So before we get into this and me showing you real numbers, what I want to talk about is what density altitude is. For those of you that are pilots, you are very familiar with this because when you're doing your flight plan, filling out your fuel consumption or knowing what that is, you have to know density altitude. So density altitude has a lot of variables in it, but your two major concerns are going to be altitude and temperature. Those are your two main ones. But you also have a component of humidity and barometric pressure in there, or pressure, okay? Because pressure changes based on altitude. And if anybody wants to put in something, let's say maybe you're a pilot and you've been doing this all your life. If I misspeak on anything, make sure you correct me, because most of the stuff I still remember, but it's been a while. But, you know, at sea level, we're going to have about 14.7 pounds per square inch on our body. But as we start to gain elevation and we get up to 8,000 feet, we have less pressure on us, okay? Now, we need to think about what cold air does. Cold air is more dense than hot air. That's why all the cold air settles to the floor in your house. And when you turn, let's say you have a 2-story and you turn the heat on, everything goes upstairs. We have to relate this to how bullets fly through the air. So we have that component of temperature. We have that component of elevation. And all of this is going to matter more so than you realize, especially for long range shooting. And this is something you should pay attention to for sure. So on this calculator here, what I've done is I've pulled 5 minutes before we started this, I pulled the density altitude for Atlanta, Georgia. It's 1,681. That's what the density altitude is. I pulled it for Denver, Colorado. Right now it's 6,695. Cheyenne, Wyoming, 6,068. Here we go. Fairbanks, Alaska, minus 4,776. That's huge, guys. Now, if we go to Los Angeles, we're at about 798. Here at home right now, we're somewhere around 1,600. But let's say you go out and you zero your rifle today and you do it and you check the density altitude and you spin your Kestrel up and you are in Denver, Colorado and you're at 6,695. But tomorrow you're going to Fairbanks, Alaska to hunt big game. And you're over there and it's minus 4,475 density altitude. Guys, that's a difference of over 10,000. I will tell you this, anytime you notice a difference of over 2,000, you're going to have a dope change. Almost guarantee it. It might be a tenth, it might be 2/10, but now look at that extreme. That could be the difference between a hit or a miss. This is why I think it's important, because I think too many guys, whether it's PRS or any other type of long-range discipline or hunting, you need to understand how density altitude is going to affect you in that bullet flight. Kenny, I know, is Kenny on here? Yeah, Kenny's on here. So how many times have we all been to a match and we're like, man, my rifle's 2/10 high, but it was perfect 2 hours ago. Well,
too many
as
times and too many
altitude
matches.
climbs, our bullet requires less hold because it's flying more efficiently, okay? So a lot of times you're like, my rifle sped up. Well, not really. Your bullet sped up because your density altitude increased, because as that temperature increased, which is one of the components, that's something you have to pay attention to. And then I'm going to have some of the guys here looking at the comments here. They're going to say, my Kestrel does it for me. Well, yeah, it does do it for you, but there's something you got to realize as a component, and that is what is your muzzle velocity right now? If you were to shoot your rifle, Joel, out of your favorite 6GT, what is your muzzle velocity, your known muzzle velocity?
Yep, I'm probably at about 28.75.
Okay, he's at 28.75. And we all kind of know the rifles that we shoot about where we're going to be. Kenny, what's your, in your 6 Creed, your favorite 6 Creed, what is your muzzle velocity?
29.30. And then the 25 Creed bore that I'm shooting now is 28.90. So it's right around that same thing.
Well, and this goes back to one key factor is that's why it's huge to have a magneto speed or whatever it is, and you get your velocity when you get there on 0 day.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that's very, very important, because I can tell you I've zeroed here in South Carolina or North Carolina, and let's just say I'm shooting a 6.5 Creed.
Yeah.
And at this, in the wintertime, it's going to change over the summertime, and the difference can be 8-9 of a mil at 1,000 yards. But you can go out there and you're going to see barometric pressures that you don't see over here. And all of that as a component is going to make it so that your bullet flies a lot more efficiently. So if I just zeroed yesterday and I go out to Logan, New Mexico or wherever, typically I'm going to have less hold on my bullets. Usually that's what I've seen. So let's get back to density altitude. These guys knew what their velocity was, and they can pay attention to the density altitude, but there's something your Kestrel does not take into consideration, is what the temperature is doing to the muzzle velocity of that bullet. Because even if you're running a stable powder, a temperature, let's say a super performance powder, I don't care who makes it, the difference between, let's say, 30 degrees in the morning in the desert, and then all of a sudden it's 90 in the afternoon, that's a 60-degree swing.
Or 120, you said the desert.
And I guarantee you that swing in temp, regardless of the powder that you're running, you're going to be faster. You remember, you put in your Kestrel muzzle velocity. It does not adjust that for you. That's something you're going to have to take into consideration. It can only fix so much. And one of the reasons for doing this podcast tonight was understanding that density altitude makes a huge difference. And you need to also understand how that works in conjunction with your particular rifle and the velocity based on temperature. Is everybody kind of tracking on that? You guys want to add anything to it? That kind of explains it so far.
Yeah. So, from my experience as well, is like I have very, very little knowledge on DA, but I have seen in the afternoon that my center fire rifles do start going over target, and I'm having to adjust, and it starts making you contemplate whether your powder is stable or not, or you got your dope right or whatnot. And it's just never really occurred to me that, hey, DA is a big factor to this. So I could definitely say, yeah, it's been playing a factor for at least missing my shots here.
Yeah, so you guys might know who Chris Way is. He runs a really, really good podcast, does a lot of stuff with, Frank Galley over at Sniper's Hide. And, Chris and I are good friends, talk to him all the time. And I just got off the phone with him earlier asking what his setup is. He actually carries DA cards with him to every match. Even though he relies on a Kestrel, having those DA cards matter. And I'm not talking about one like this. You can make your own, because there's another component you need to understand about DA. DA not only affects how that bullet is flying for elevation, but it also affects your wind holds. Let me say that again. It also affects your wind holds. So it might only be 1/10 or 2/10 off, but if the target's small enough, that could be a hit or a miss, depending on what your hold is. You still got to do your part on the wind calls. And I'll show you that up close here in just a minute. I need to go get some glasses so I can actually read this. So I'm going to let these guys talk. I got to get set up.
Glad I'm not the only one with that problem.
Yeah, I got the same thing. I think he's probably borrowing my glasses, matter of fact.
I am.
Yeah.
I mean, you can go down the rabbit hole, and it completely makes sense. There's going to be changes. But if you know in the morning that it's going to get warmer during the day, more than likely your feet per second is going to go up. So in turn, you know that, one, you could either, I don't know the magic way to do this, you could either, one, change your muzzle velocity, or you could, two, just take 2/10 out or whatever you're seeing. Now, the wind factor part of it, if you were to change your muzzle velocity, shouldn't the Kestrel take that into consideration? And then it would be more likely, and this is a question, guys, for those of you listening out there, wouldn't that more likely calculate now that the muzzle velocity is more correct?
Not necessarily, because how many of you can actually go onto your Kestrel Ballistics app and show all the temperature changes? Because most people only fill out one or two of the blocks on what your velocity is at this given speed.
Yeah,
almost all of us, if we go to our phones right now, we pull up our favorite rifle, you'll have 2 or 3 entries. But do you have an entry at 20 degrees, at 60 degrees, at 100 degrees? Because that needs that trash in, trash out. The more information you can give it for what your burn rate is on that powder based on the temperature, that's going to really determine how much that Kestrel really knows. So now that I can actually see this, now guys, I'm going to kind of take the full camera up here in just a second so you guys can see it. But we are at 1600 density altitude right now. Now remember, this is a 308 and we are shooting 175 grain Sierra Match King. Now I can tell you these cards are pretty much dead on. for back in the day anyway. And I don't know if you guys can see this or not. I think I'll try to get the glare off. We're going to pretend that we're going to take an 800-yard shot with a density altitude of 1,600, which we're on 1,000 at the top, and you guys are going to see 7.4. That should be my hole, right? 7.4. Now, let's say we jump on a plane, and we're going to be in, let's remember that number, 7.4. Yep, 7.4. There it is.
Click on the one.
He's going to switch my screen over. There's 7.4. Now, if we change the density altitude to, yeah, there we go. Now I'm looking at my nasty fingers. Now we're going to go to, I couldn't even get to Fairbanks because this only goes to -3. Well, let's say we go to 4,000 density altitude. Okay. Now we look at 800, you're going to see 7.1. You're like, man, that's only 3/10. Well, it depends on how small the targets are that you're shooting at. And remember, we only changed 3,000 feet of density altitude. If we start looking at some of those, remember, we saw almost 10,000. At 7,000, that's 6.7. Now we're over half a mil off. So this is, let's go ahead and go back to the regular screen. This is why density altitude is something that you really need to take note of. And I know Joel's already doing it. How long have you been logging your stuff with density altitude? For a year?
I imagine it's been 3 or 4 years now.
Correct. But there's so many shooters I know that don't do it. And it's on your Kestrel. It'll tell you what that density altitude is. And, you know, I see a lot of guys complain, man, I just keep missing shots. That could be a component of it. Now, if you're only worried about 1/10 or 2/10, but you can't hold, let's say you can't hold an MOA, then it might not matter. Enough errors cancel where you make the hit or you didn't. But if you're really looking at those nuances of what all's affecting your impact, it could actually be density altitude, especially for us coming from the East Coast and flying all the way out to Wyoming or Utah or wherever and shooting these matches. Or like Kenny's getting ready to do this week. He's flying from Arizona here on Thursday. We're going to shoot a match on Saturday, and I guarantee you, from every rifle that he shoots, even if he sends me the air, my bullet will be slower here, guaranteed, by about 60 to 80 feet per second out of any rifle just from him coming from Arizona.
Yeah, and we're actually going to do that test. I'm bringing that new Lapua super long range and long range, and I'm going to test it here before I fly out and go out there and get the velocity readings to see what it does with not just accuracy, but also long distance accuracy and SDs. So we'll see what that does for us.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's see. I'm going, Abigail says, I'm guessing I'd lose a few feet per second going from 27 degrees down to -18. Yeah, you absolutely will. Yeah, no doubt. More than likely, yes. So Chris has been doing a lot of testing. I don't want to give it away what he's doing, but it has a lot to do with temperature and different powders, you know, going all the way from -10 all the way up to like 100 degrees. And it's kind of amazing some of the information he's come up with. It does change, but it's not linear. Kind of like the DB testing. You don't just immediately start to see this linear climb. There are certain temperature ranges where it spikes quite a bit on the velocity.
Yeah, this is actually a test that I've actually been doing with the 25 Creedmoor lately. As I take a little cooler and I either have a heat pack in there, a heat warmer, or a little ice brick, and seeing how it actually affects the velocity. Because in the matches that we shoot, you know, the CD matches and these PRS matches, we start early morning and in the afternoon. And if you're in a node that's not like super stable, I noticed that's where I started dropping some points and not knowing where my dope is. So what do you think about doing something like that?
Yeah, Rick, up to this point, have you ever paid attention or took note of any of the density altitudes? Because I don't recall you doing that.
I don't record them. I used to on my sniper logbook.
Yeah.
For my 6.5.
But that's when you first got started. Now you're into it really, really heavy. And
no, I don't.
And this conversation came up because Rick had made a comment about something. And I was like, and not to call you out, but just letting everybody know, I was like, I don't think that matters. I said, I think there are other things that matter that you're not taking note of. And that's going to segue us into the next thing. One of the other things I mentioned to Rick was how many people actually check their scope tracking and how much error. You know, your best pro shooters in the world, somewhere around 2.5 to 3% is acceptable of scope tracking error. Beyond that, you need to be looking at another scope or whatever. And the thing is you can't just, and I'm not calling out any manufacturer by name, but let's say you take a high quality scope one and it's got 2%. And then you got another one that's the same make, same model, same reticle, and it runs 3%. Well, that's a percentage of error. But what if you change your scope out? Because, and I was thinking about Matt. Matt just got a brand new scope today.
Yep.
He's got all of his data. And if he mounts that scope on the rifle and goes to shoot a match tomorrow, guess what? 10 mils might not be 10 mils that he already had everything set for in his Kestrel.
Yeah, it might be 9.5.
Yeah, because that tracking error is different with every scope. You should really do that. And you can go to Applied Ballistics, Brian Litz. There's an easy formula. You don't have to have 100 yards. You could do it at 82 yards. And it will tell you what your scope tracking error is. You just need a taller target to be able to do this with. You can buy pre-printed targets, but it all matters when you're starting to miss those shots. I know, Joel, you use scope tracking tests quite a bit, or you check them, right?
Yeah. I try to check them every single scope that comes through my hands, and then of course maybe about once a year or something I will, because I just assume that things wear out, I guess, loosen up maybe over time with significant use, and so like once a year or something I'll come back and I'll just revisit it and just test it again just to make sure that it's all still working as I thought it should be. Yeah.
And I think that's a very important component. And there is a way to go into your Kestrel. And, I think on DOF, I think it's like form factor or whatever. I don't even know exactly, but you can put that in there. So 2% error can make a difference, especially at distance on what your holds are. But the biggest thing is knowing don't change that scope beforehand. So I am going to mention this because I am going to be doing a review on it. This actually came up in the last video that I put out. On all of us, regardless of where you live, more than likely, if you're shooting center X out of your rifle, and even we got Josh on here for pursuit of accuracy. Matter of fact, I'm going to leave this a surprise question. I'm going to let Josh with pursuit of accuracy answer this. I'm going to call him out. No pressure. But off the top of your head, if you zero your 22 long rifle, your PRS Rimfire rifle at 50 yards, and it's dead on the money, what is your approximate hold going to be at 100 yards? Let's just see what you say. So while he's working on that and getting ready to type in his answer on what his hold would be at 100 yards, I can already tell you what I think it's going to be because it's probably going to. He's like, uh-oh.
1.8.
Maybe he doesn't know. Joel, what is your difference? Do you know?
I would guess I'm in the neighborhood of 1.8, 1.9.
Okay. Kenny?
1.8 on that 24-inch barrel.
All right. Pursuit of accuracy is 1.7. And Rick,
1.7.
He's 1.7. So when we were out the other day and I was shooting with Matt on that Motocam versus the CZ MTR. Now he has a Night Force. I shoot a lot of Night Force scopes, and typically I'm running around 1.7, 1.8. And I told Matt, I said, it's going to be 1.8. He puts it on 1.8. He's dead on the money. The CZ, on the other hand, with that, and I'm not calling them out because it's actually a good scope for the money. It's the Arkin EP5. It's sub $500. It is made in China. I get it. But in order for me to be dead zero at 100 yards, I had to dial 2 mils. Now, how is that even possible? And somebody say, well, have you thought about the velocity of your bullet? And that's the irony of this. I was 50 feet per second faster than Matt, but I was having to hold 0.2 more at 100 yards. The only thing that can really be attributed to, period, and end of story, is going to be scope tracking error. And with a sub $500 scope, I could see that being an issue. Typically, they're not going to spend the time on QC to run their scope tracking tests, and 5% might be acceptable for them. I mean, you get what you pay for, right? And this is why we pay $2,000 and $3,000 for, zero compromise or Razor HD Gen 3s. And so these are things that really matter in the long run. not worrying about these other little things that I think don't really affect it. You need to worry about density, altitude. You need to worry about your tracking error, and then of course have good dope.
But again, if it's 2 and 2 is at 100 and 2 works, then it's 2
It is for that scope.
for that scope.
But I
with
better
that
not
rifle.
use that Kestrel and build a profile and then switch it out to a Night Force the day before the match because
No.
I don't want to run this low-end scope and think that the data is going to be right. It will be completely off. You're going to miss more targets
right for the wrong scope.
Yeah, you're going to still be zeroed at 50 if you do the 50-yard zero, but you're going to be completely off base. You got to turret test Arkans on the China blend. Oh, jeez. It's actually, well, it's not there anymore. They shot it down, if you guys don't know.
Yeah, if you didn't know, it went all the way across the United States. So they made sure they got all the information they needed. Then we blew it up.
Yeah, Joe Stommer, he's dead on the money.
Tell that.
1.7 to 1.9 is typically what you're going to see. And so Dick Hedges, this is great information. I don't know if we can highlight. It's okay. We're not going to get up. But on the Kestrel, gun profile, elevation, click, enter correction factor. So that gives you a way to do it. And so you can put that scope error in there for the correction factor, just like you can do your offsets.
Okay, so now we put that in there at 100 yards. Because I don't know this question either. I'm asking. Maybe you know, maybe you don't. So now 100 yards is 2. Now what?
You're still going to see, like on the CZ, like when we went out there yesterday, I still ran it and said, hey, that is what it is with this scope and this rifle and this velocity for today. But I still built my DSF after the 200 because 200 was dead on. What it said was right.
Yeah,
for the
something or something like that.
Yeah, for the Kestrel. But then I had to adjust the DSF, which you guys should all be doing on your rimfires at 250, 300, 350, 400 if you're going to do that. But that is for that scope combination with that rifle with that ammo.
But what's it changing? Is it taking that percentage and continues to move it?
Well, what we're doing, that is the correction factor that he's talking about, that 2%. So,
but he adds that?
Yeah, it basically adds that to the numbers.
So right with 300, it's
because how many times have you went out there with your rifle, with your load, and put it in there, and all the numbers were spot on the Kestrel? It's magic. No, it does happen. It does happen. But everything lines up, and you're like, holy crap, this thing's dead on the money. Well, that was everything working out right. Your scope correction error, your drops, all of that, your velocity, because most people are just going to do that. They're just going to do magneto speed, get the velocity. And 9 times out of 10, that's going to be close enough on a big target. But when you get into these small PRS style or KYL targets, this is when you're going to have to start putting all this extra data in there. Having those charts for the temperature ranges, for what it's doing to your velocity, paying attention to the density altitude.
Kenny's trying to show something here.
I said, all this really is a big ass calculator. So if you put on your DA or your correction factor, then it's just going to be formulated into the rest of the ballistics. When you start DSFing, what Ray actually told me was the DSF actually changes your curvature to match what your bullet does. And, what I noticed from testing all these rifles that every barrel engraves these bullets differently, and it changes something called ballistic coefficient deviation. So every rifle will shoot that projectile, even though it's the same barrel length. I can make 2 exact same rifles and they will shoot differently downrange. And that's what DSF really helps you out with.
And for those guys that don't know about Kenny with Desert Precision Gun Work, he builds some of the best custom rifles, period. He puts the time and effort and energy into it. But he's just now getting his feet wet into competitions pretty strong. And so you had a match last weekend. I'm going to tell on you. He placed 3rd place overall with 88 shooters. But what was the process I told you so you can share with everybody else in case they don't know what they've got to do to build that curve for their rifle?
All right. So Ray was 100% spot on. This was the Usury X match here in Mesa, Arizona. Is one of the biggest NRL 22X matches. So the process was the day before we had a range day, 0 day. I went and zeroed out my scope at 50 yards and got my exact hold at 100 yards, inputted that data into the Kestrel. From there, it will correct the muzzle velocity, and you want to leave it at that. The next thing you want to do is shoot at 225 yards or 250 and start inputting your correction, getting a water line on the target. You want to make sure you have a spot on that target that you know your elevation is consistent. Obviously, you're going to need some ammunition that has good SDs for that. So at 250 yards, you start DSFing 250, 300, 350, 400. And once you get to those and you got those input into the Kestrel, you literally are spot on at those longer ranges. And it really did help me out in that match.
Okay, so what Kenny told you is exactly correct, but let me back up a little bit for those that we might be going a little too quick for. DSF is drop scale factor.
Right.
And it works really, really well. And the reason we have to do this with a rimfire is because we're in that subsonic range. Don't do this on your centerfire rifle. That's a caveat that I need to explain to you. You need to be in transonic, subsonic before you start messing with DSF.
We're in rimfire mode right now.
Rimfire mode, yeah, exactly. So what we're doing is, and you guys can see me up here.
We'll see Joe.
So like we shoot at 50 yards and we get that impact at 100 and we get it at 200. And we're building this muzzle velocity. We're getting it trued out from 200 and in. And that should all be good when we correct muzzle velocity. But once we get beyond that 200 threshold and we go to 250, now what we want to do is tell it. You're saying it's, I'm going to make up a number, guys. Let's say at 250 yards, it's 14 mils. And you shoot it and it's 14.2 mils. Well, if you change the muzzle velocity at 250, that just screwed up all of your 100 and 150 and all that back here. So what you're saying is leave 200 and in alone, and I want to drop a point right here at 250, and it's not 14, it's 14.2. Then you're going to do 300, and you shoot 300. 300 says, okay, we're making up a number, 20 mils.
17.
But it's 20.5. Well, you have to DSF again, and you can go into your gun profile on the Kestrel, and it will say calibrate DSF. You input that in, and one of the things I'll tell you is it should be close to the number 1, like 0.98. You start seeing numbers like 0.91, you've screwed up something on the curve, or you went backwards and tried to hit 250 after you've already done it. You cannot go backwards. If you go backwards once, you've made this curve do this.
Yeah, it's gone.
It's gone. You got to restart the profile. So it's 0 to 200, muzzle velocity. Then 250 DSF, 300 DSF, 350, and then 400. Just DSF every time. That's it. Done. And the profile's built for that rifle.
See, and Joe, I believe Joe's from Texas, if it's right. It's in see, and he's saying you only have 6 DSFs, which is completely true. And then above that, you see where he has 3 profiles. So there's 2 thought processes. The one Ray had just said, and then there's one where you hit DSF all the way out. The problem is that if you run out at 6 and say you only made it to 400 yards, but you want to go to 5, you're going to have to build another profile. So this way, the way Ray was talking about, is definitely a good way to do it, especially if you're seeing some really funky stuff and you don't want to have to deal with having 3 profiles.
Right.
So you have an option there as well. I don't know if one's better than the other. I'll just keep my opinion to myself. But there is that option available as well. But it is, remember, you only get 6 of them, and it has to be from short to long.
No, I was reading Josh's comments. He's killing me.
Do Ozzy's read back. And but yeah, it seems that, so like you had said, Ray, so for those of you that are kind of trying to figure out both methods, you're basically changing. If I hit at 100 yards and it's let's say it's 1.7, and my Kestrel said 1.5. Basically, my muzzle velocity, what did I say? 1.7. So it'd be it's hitting high, so it's faster than. So I would need to bring that number down to where now the Kestrel shows 1.5, and then that should be my muzzle velocity. That's basically what it's
a corrected muzzle velocity.
Corrected muzzle velocity. So from there to 200, that's where I would tweak with that, and then start your DSF.
And guys, don't get discouraged. I mean, sometimes when you correct muzzle velocity, it's going to throw, let's say, 1150 out there, and you're like, man, I'm nowhere near 1150. I know for a fact this is 1092. Sometimes you just have to do it. Now, whether that's a combination of scope tracking error and the planet's not aligning. I don't know, but you're telling it this is what it needs to be for me to make my impact. And you got to go with that. You really do.
Yeah, and I think it's a good idea to run both. So, like, I have Skittles 2.0.
Yep.
It would be smart of me to have Skittles 2.0 in one version and 2.0 in another version.
Yep.
And see what's lining up throughout the day better. You know what I mean? I don't know.
Actually, this is really important for the rimfire stuff because there's stages out there where you got a KYL rack, then you got confirmation targets out these random distances, like 300 yards. And if you got to do a holdover and your DSF is off, you're going to be missing a shot every confirmation target. So I noticed that on this last match. There was like 2 stages that had that. Yeah.
Now, Dick Hedges brings up a good point, but I got to laugh at what Pursuit of Accuracy says. He says, can we get some pros on here? We're not sure about these talentless YouTubers. So that's really funny. But anyway, funny. So Dick Hedges says, I need to explain the correction factor is calibrating your scope. So yes, correction factor is different than DSF. Correction factor is for that scope tracking error that we noticed, whether it's 2% or 5% or 3%. DSF is drop scale factor, which is going to be setting in specific inputs along your ballistic curve as an absolute. This is what it is at 250, regardless of what you're saying, but don't mess with my previous dope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts, Joel?
I've never shot a 22 past 300 yards, so I'm not really a pro on it. You know, Josh, maybe you should call Josh and say, you want to talk about center fire stuff? That's my realm. But no, the 22 stuff, it's super important to true it out. I mean, it's the same with the center fires, right? Like we need to, like you're talking about water line. Some people, I always have to back up. Like some people don't even know what you mean by water line, but basically you just pick the center of your target and spray paint a black line across your white steel target or whatever and call that your center, your water line. And then just see how far above and below you're hitting that line, you know, at each distance and just true everything up. You're saying inside of 200 yards for a 22. I'm just giving you a read back on what I've been learning here tonight. Is that you're going to adjust muzzle velocity on a 22 long rifle, and then past that, you're doing your drop scale factor, which I totally understand. I've just never messed with the drop scale factor because, I mean, our local matches here, I mean, they run good matches. Obviously, I mean, the national championships or whatever was held here, but so the guys can put together good matches. But the longest that I can't ever remember going past 300 yards in a match for a 22 long rifle here. You know what I mean? And those are just big old targets out there where, you know, for the guys that, as long as you're managing all the other variables and getting a good wind call, even if you didn't do your DSF stuff, you're probably still going to hit that target. But you're not going to see that out here. Out here, you pretty much have to do the DSF. Now, Joe Starmer, you know, he's got 0 to 150, 150 to 275, and 275 to 400. And I think that's really good information. I will tell you, I'm not pulling this out of my butt. This is me sharing information and discussing it with Brian Litz, discussing it with Todd Hodnett on how it's supposed to be done. I think Kestrel actually put out something about 1.5 years ago, and their recommendation was like this as well. I know some guys will do 150 and in for muzzle velocity, and then they will do every 25 yards for DSFing. To me, that's I don't know. I don't have that much time at a range usually, but one of the things I tell you we do, you were talking about the water line, because we're not hand loading this ammunition. You are going to have variances. So what we do is we attach a magneto speed via a mount system on an Arca Swiss, so we're not touching the barrel or messing with harmonics. And every shot that we shoot, if we see it low on the water line, we're taking note of what that velocity was so that we know, hey, we just had a slow round. It was 10 feet per second slower than what our normal shot is.
Yeah, or 30.
And we can take those notes. Don't base it off 1 or 2 shots. You're shooting that water line maybe 5 rounds, and you're seeing that, hey, I'm all over this thing. You know, depending on the distance, you're either going to hit it or you're going to be a little above it, a little below it.
Yeah.
And you just keep doing this on all these targets all the way out so that when you build this ballistic profile, it's spot on at those distances.
And don't just take the one round for it.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, perfect. All right, I'm moving on to the next one. because it's 22 ammo. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Trying to read through some of the comments here, and if you guys want to add anything, I'm just going to keep reading, make sure I don't miss anything.
let's see.
Well, you know, like I said, going back to center fire, we're really not going to play with that DSF on there. There's something called calculate velocity. Is going to give you a yardage, and you want to be within 10% of that. And if you can, typically these 6mm cartridges are going to be like anywhere between 1,160 yards to like 1,300 yards. So most ranges don't have that long range, but if you have ability to get out there, that's going to really true up your Kestrel data. I'm not sure,
Show 'em where
Joel,
the
you have
star
any
comes in.
experience with that.
Okay, so
I'm sorry.
what
Can you say
he's
that again,
talking
please?
about specifically, guys, is on a Kestrel, when you're truing out muzzle velocity, if all you have is 300 yards and you're shooting a 6 Creed or a 6.5 Creed, you're going to get bad data. It's going to tell you based on the input you went in there, and where you want to true out muzzle velocity is within 10% of Mach 1.2. So it's looking at your bullet velocity and your bullet weight, and it's saying, okay, I'm within that 10% of that Mach 1.2, and it's going to tell you where you need to true your muzzle velocity. Now, I haven't done this in a while, but we're going to check the 6 arc right here. So this is a 6 arc profile. You guys can see it right there. I'm going to try to do this upside down, and I'm going to enter that and muzzle velocity. Now, for this rifle, I'm going to screw up this whole chart, but that's okay. It says my muzzle velocity is 27.23, but let's say that's wrong, okay? And I need to change it, and I need to calibrate muzzle velocity. When I click on calibrate muzzle velocity, watch this. You see at the top, it just popped up 931. That is your optimal yardage to true your muzzle velocity for this cartridge. So if you're not within 10% of that, so about 93 yards minus or plus, your muzzle velocity truing is incorrect. Don't do that. And so if you get into the 6.5s and 6 Creeds, you're going to be in that 1,200 feet per second or 1,200 yard range.
When you get a range card, also doesn't the star come up at the distance?
Let me see here.
I think it's a star.
But just to be clear on that, I guess, just because, you know, a lot of people don't have ranges to go out to that distance. I mean, I figure, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I've always, and I think I kind of learned this from Frank Galley, so I'll put the pressure on him instead of myself. But it's just that I've always done muzzle velocity on center fires at 600 yards. So up to 600 yards, if my dope is off, I will adjust muzzle velocity in the Kestrel, and then beyond 600, say 700 to 1200 ish, then I'll start adjusting BC.
That's right.
But if you don't have that kind of distance, you still can do pretty dang good. I mean, it's better to do it, you know, adjust your BC from, you know, 600 to 800 yards. If that's all you've got is 800 yards, you're still going to have a more truer curve. You know what I mean? So it's like it doesn't necessarily have to be done at that specific within 10% of, you know, what you were saying, but that gives you best results. Obviously, I'm just saying, like,
correct.
I guess I'm just saying it for people that don't have the kind of distance in order to get the perfect curve built out.
No, and you're absolutely right. But like I said, when I was in Texas with Hodnett and them, they were saying that's close enough for like most of the military guys. You put it in there, they've got the distance, they can put it in, and they're good to go. Now, we were using the different Kestrels. I don't know if this one was it or not, but it has all of the small arms in it already preloaded with the military ammunition. And as long as you're within 10% of that, you're going to get a hit on a man target. Period. End of story. It works all the way out to 2,000 yards.
That makes it nice.
But yeah, like you're saying, some people are limited, and you do what you got to do. Just true it out to the distance that you've got, and it'll be close. It'll be close. At what distance do you true your rimfire? And that's what we were just talking about, Joe. You know, we zero at 50, and we will true somewhere around 200 yards or 150, as long as you don't have any huge errors at 100.
What about Dick's comment on inner correction factor?
Yeah, that all needs to be done first. Dick is spot on. and sometimes I think we move a little too fast, or at least I do. You need to figure out your correction factor for your scope first, get that in there, and then do the DSF. Don't ever do it backwards. When you get a new scope, you should do a tall target test or a tracking test. It's very simple. Joel, I think you did a video on that years ago, or 2 years ago.
Yeah, on which one? I'm sorry. Josh had me distracted in the comments. It's his fault.
Yeah, you actually did a a really good video on how to do a tall target test.
Okay. Yeah, it's been a couple years.
Yeah, so if you haven't checked out Joel's channel, it's mostly about long range, and it's Precision Rifle Network. And then we had the opportunity to meet Joe and shoot with him out at the Competition Dynamics match this last spring or this last fall, and you learned quite a bit.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I think I met him at Nationals.
Yeah.
NRL Nationals.
Yeah.
Hung out a little
I
bit
learned
too in
more
SHOT
that
Show.
one match out there. Yeah, sorry. I was just going to say I learned more in that one match than I have in years of just kind of going to competitions and whatever. I really had felt kind of plateaued, like stagnation in my training for a good long while. And then I go out there and I try something completely different. It wasn't only that it was different types of positions, because now it's not man-made, or now it's not man-made barricades, it's natural terrain. But I've never shot out west until that match. You know what I mean? Dealing with a little bit higher altitude, dealing with deep valleys and winds coming from different directions. And it was a learning experience, a really good one.
Yeah.
So did you shoot
NRL Hunter matches?
the team match?
They're kind of popping up. Those NRL Hunter matches, I was going to say, they're kind of set up the same way, and they're popping up more often. And I'm starting to see them migrate towards the East Coast now.
Yeah. So Jay Gorelli, he's talking about South Carolina has a mile range that's great. He's talking about Clinton House Plantation, hit a mile last Sunday. So this is what's really cool. And like I said, back in the day when we were doing all this stuff and we had all these data log books and everything else, it was hard to hit 1,000 yards. Okay. They didn't have what we've got nowadays. Nowadays, I can get a kid that's 11 years old, put them on a rifle, and they're going to hit a 1,000 yard target within 3 shots, probably, if they're doing what they need to do. It's not that difficult. And not to take away from you, Jay Gorelli or Gorell Jay, 1,000, the 1 mile target out at Clinton House, if you've got a decent caliber, like even a 308 will do it, but it's not the best tool for the job, because you're probably, unless you're shooting Kenny loads here, you're probably going to be way into that subsonic range. But with a 6.5 or 6 Creedmoor, I mean, heck, I even did it with a 5.56. You should be able to get on that mile target within 5 to 10 shots. It's gotten a lot easier to do long range because of Kestrels, because of the information sharing that we're all doing.
Look what Womfat said about the freaking he plugged in the applied ballistic curve for the SK long range match. Didn't have to make any adjustments to 340. That's freaking amazing.
Yes, and so Womfat, glad you're on here. That was one of those moments where it's magical. You put everything in and it's spot on for every hold, but it doesn't happen that often, and that's why the DSF is important, because it rarely happens where everything lines up.
Well, and that was lucky enough because his barrel made the right speed.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Everything lined up with however they had tested it to make that applied ballistics thing.
Now, all of us on here, most of us that I know, we are all long-range shooters and not so much hunters. Kenny, I know you don't really hunt other than coyotes. I don't hunt any longer. I don't think you hunt, and I don't know about Joel. But the whole reason for this chat tonight, I called Rick. I was like, if we can do a chat, we need to talk about density altitude. I had one of my viewers zero his rifle yesterday out at Clinton House, and he is getting ready to go on a big game hunt. Went through a lot of trouble and a lot of money to be able to get the tags and everything else. And he told me he was going to be close to 9,000 plus feet of elevation. And he wanted to know.
It's a lot different from Clinton House.
It's a lot different than Clinton House. Clinton House, you're at about 700 feet or so.
Yeah,
and he's like, if I'm dead on, am I going to be good out there? And I was like, yes and no. I said, if you have your Kestrel and you trust it and you you get your compass calibration and all that other stuff right, it's going to get you close. But you still got to take into consideration density altitude, which the Kestrel will help with, but it's not going to take the consideration that you're going to be in -5 degrees and we don't know what the temperature of or the velocity of your barrel's going to be putting out for your rifle. I said, you could miss really low. I said, all of this matters. And so that's what got me into thinking about mentioning this. And hopefully, you guys learned a little bit about how all this stuff matters. I think it matters for 22 more than we realize as well. Which that's going to lead us into another topic.
Well, just throwing out there the ammo issue too, especially cold weather, high altitude hunting like that. It's going to be cold. Your ammo is going to be cold. Your barrel's getting freezing cold. All that stuff matters. Case in point is the extreme long range shooter, centerfire guys. They're bringing all their rounds to the range in climate controlled cases these days. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's crazy.
So this brings me to another topic, and I know there's a lot of rimfire folks on here, and I got to be careful going down this rabbit hole. But I did a bunch of research into it, and I'm not a bench rest shooter, but Kenny builds a lot of rifles for bench rest rimfire guys. And those guys, for them, they're trying to get one in that little dot to get that centered, go to the next one. And those guys, when it gets cold, from everything that I've researched, when it gets to a certain temperature, they're keeping those rounds in their pockets to keep them warm. And that is a component of what do we have on rimfire bullets that we typically don't see on centerfire bullets?
Wax.
We got wax and we have the oils. So Kenny actually called Womfat today because he lives in a really cold climate.
Canada.
And what he does is what I'm reading everywhere, and that is they wipe off the excess oils or wax off of those bullets before they shoot them. Because when we start thinking about the temperature changes with a rimfire, we're not just talking about drops in velocity like we do on centerfire, but we're also talking about viscosity of that lubricant that is on the outside of that bullet. Because I know yesterday when we shot, it was chilly, and I had clumps of the oil wax stuff on the center X that's normally pretty oily. It kind of reminded me of some Ely ammo, that uses the beeswax. And I was like, geez, all this extra has got to make a difference. So it got me thinking a little bit more about basically strings of fire with your 22. If you can heat that barrel up, and you guys are going to say you're not going to heat a 22 barrel up. Well, ironically, the Olympic Federation did a bunch of tests on this. And yes, with their string of fire, when they shoot, it increases the temperature of the barrel by up to 5 degrees Celsius. Okay. So if somebody's got a calculator close, or they're
about 40
degrees.
Damn.
So
roughly.
It changes at 40 degrees. Well, ironically, what they've noticed, or some other groups have noticed, and this really hit home with me because the groups that myself and Matt shot last week were not indicative of what I know that CZ can do. And it wasn't indicative of what Matt thought his Motocam would do. But the temperature was in the mid 40s. It started low 40s that morning. Most guys struggle with rimfire when the temperature drops below 40 is when you're starting to see your worst groups. And it's because of that lubricant on the outside. I've done a ton of research into this. Yeah. And then you're also going to have more bad ignitions, which you saw a ton of when we shot that Way of the Sniper years ago. Remember when it was like 20 degrees as a high?
Yeah.
And this is why there is, polar biathlon ammunition. That's all made for this low temperature stuff. But I think you're going to see variances on your groups when it's cold out than what you see when it's 60 degrees or 65 degrees. I think your rifle will perform better with a rimfire at higher temps.
It'll be more consistent.
Yep.
SDs, I bet, too.
Yep.
So Womfat actually says he uses gloves removing the oil when he loads his SK. And I think he, from our conversation, if I recall correctly, he uses SK primarily because that's what he could get a hold of up there. But the guys are also seeing that Ely is actually more temperature stable in those colder climates. But you said those
I'll
guys
give you
don't
a
really
perfect
have that much
example.
problem.
The Ely I have, which is actually shocked me yesterday or 2 days ago. So it's 76 degrees.
Oh, he's got 2 temperature inputs in here.
This is, for this right.
Yeah. The more information you can put, like when we went out there the other day, I think it felt like it was about 12 degrees. That was a good day to put the temperature and what that velocity was for that day, because it'll change.
So at 76 degrees and at 43 degrees, it was 1095.
Yeah.
That's a lot. That's 30-something degrees difference.
And you saw no change.
There was no change in velocity.
So that's one of those things that I was talking to Chris about, is sometimes you will see things like that, and then all of a sudden it will spike just by another 7 degrees or 8 degrees, but between 40 and 70, you didn't see a change whatsoever. It was the same.
It was the same.
Now,
the group?
Go ahead. The groups might have been bigger.
The groups are probably bigger, but as far as the muzzle velocity,
it stayed
at
constant.
that temperature,
It stayed constant.
Yeah.
It's good to know.
That was with Ely Match.
Yep.
Yeah, Ray, that article, did you read through that whole article I sent you?
I read the whole thing.
Yeah. I saw a bunch of equations and I skipped forward, but anyway, just to summarize on that, they did a lot of testing in a controlled environment on whether or not you're heating up a 22 long rifle barrel enough for point of impact shift to occur. And it's just not happening.
Now that was external temperatures too. I don't know if you read that test. They measured on the outside, not the inside.
That's true. But but even there, like internally, I don't know. I guess I'm posing a question. Do you guys think that in a 10 round stage of 22 long rifle, that internally that barrel's heating up any more than a handful?
I've seen it in a carbon fiber barrel.
Yeah. Well, here's another thing too. They strictly adhered to what a biathlon's rate of fire is when they're shooting a match. And typically that's what? Is it 5 rounds where they do the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and they got the sighter? I don't think it's going to be the same rate of fire, but they strictly stayed to what the average was for their rate of fire. I'm sure we could heat ours up a lot faster when we're going out there and shooting 10 rounds, going to the next one, shooting 10 rounds, loading a mag, shooting 10 rounds. Yeah. I think we're going to probably generate more heat. Yeah. Now I'm talking about when we're zeroing. A lot of times we'll go and shoot for groups and we'll shoot 10 rounds, 10 rounds, 10 rounds, 10 rounds, and never let it cool. There was also something very interesting about that article. What they said was the first shot, or what they call the warming shot for a rimfire, is not a warming shot and has nothing to do with that. They said it's more of a component of clearing the prior debris out of the chamber or out of the barrel. And that's what makes that first round cold bore, basically, or the warming shot. That's what makes the difference, is the residue within the barrel itself.
Yeah, because my clean cold bore will shoot better than my cold foul bore.
Got it. Yep. Because it doesn't have stuff in it.
It don't got shit to be bouncing around.
That's why we don't shoot suppressors, because we don't want all that crap bouncing down the barrel when we go muzzle up.
I was just about to say that. Based on that article, it's like, the pressures of a 22 long rifle are significantly lower than that of a center fire. And, we sit here and wonder, that coupled with a bunch of nasty wax and blowback from suppressors, why 22s get dirtier than everything else. Well, there's not really enough pressure to blow everything out. And we're putting sticky substances down there that's grabbing onto every freaking thing. It's just, I don't know. I'm just convinced 22s aren't designed initially to be precision instruments, I guess. I don't know.
Damn it, Joel. Yes, they are.
Don't say that. Look at all the biathlon shooters that shoot groups like this. They are much closer, but still.
Yeah.
Who is this?
It's kind of a precision.
Who invited this guy?
What the hell? Where's the button at? What's this eject button right here?
Here it is.
No, I'm with Joel. I like more center fire.
Oh, jeez. He's like, I'm out of here.
He go.
Yeah.
All right. So those are my 2 topics tonight. Was basically that and the density altitude. So I'll let one of you guys take over. I got to take a break.
Nice.
Daniel, the fouling shots is depending on what you're doing. And I'm not a bench rest guy, but I know you got sighters basically. And then in the morning we got zeros.
A little bit because the 22 long rifle guy, the bench rest guys out here, They typically run a tighter barrel, so a lot of guys do run like the Luke Walther barrels or IBI. I build them with tighter Krieger barrels, so they always have something called a cold bore shift. Now these guys are shooting for score. They got an array of targets, typically 25 targets, and they will shoot for the center dot. And you have a little plug in there, depending if they break the ring or not. It bases their score. So a perfect score is like a 225, 25x or whatnot, 50 yards and 100 yards. You have sighters, which they'll file their bore in, and then they'll call out shooting for score, and then they'll go to the whole array of targets, what they call a string. So that's what the cold bore is, or fouling shots, or shot, so to say.
Or you could say what it really is, and it's a freaking cheating way to figure out which way the wind's blowing and where I need to hold.
Dude, the sport's so unreal. Like, if you guys ever go to a bench rest or ARA or IBI League bench rest, they literally have like lawn darts and objects out there, like the flamingos and crap, things you could buy at Walmart or Kmart and stick it in there like every 15 feet. And you're just seeing this thing. It looks looks funky as hell. It could be laughable, but man, sport's pretty serious.
Yeah, when they're reloading at the truck, that's when I knew. I was like, nope. There's no way I'm gonna like this.
Ain't nobody got
Yeah.
time for that. That's ridiculous,
Yeah,
man.
There are some guys, I'm not sure if you're aware, but 22 Rimfire is reloadable, and they actually make a centerfire version of a Rimfire. So essentially, it's RCC brass, which is lathe turn brass, which accepts a small rifle or small pistol primer. Most guys run small pistol primer, and they reload it with like H296 or something crazy, like 1.5 grains. And these guys swage their own bullets. It gets pretty sciencey, and honestly, if you want to go down that rabbit hole, you're too deep to begin with.
I just don't have the time for that, man. Like,
Dude.
it doesn't matter, center fire or rim fire. It's like I'm out there to have fun. You know, gosh dang, just the time. My time is the most valuable thing that I have on the face of this earth. You know, it really is. Time with my family, time with my, whatever. Like, if it starts eating into my time, I'm pushing it away. I'd rather pay more money and save time. But that's just me,
But I think that's the reason why a lot of guys are straying towards the 22 rimfire. I mean, 22 is just going off out here. So guys are just finding, I guess, well, the biggest thing is harder to find components. Some of us are having luck, but guys are more strained towards the rimfire because of that. But there is that very niche crowd, which are, when you look at them reloading 22s, it almost looks like a drug factory. A little Coke spoon that they put in there, little mini funnels and crap. It's fun, man.
Scales and all sorts of shit.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. But yeah, I mean, I prefer centerfire. I'm a big centerfire guy. I build a lot of 22 rimfires, but centerfire has always been my thing, and I think a lot of it's because my OCD and my I guess I want to control everything that I do. So reloads and all that is all me. So if I fire my center fire bullet downrange and it misses, I have nothing to blame but me,
Yeah, there's a lot of fun in there. But then you just say, you know what? All this little crap you're doing, would it be better to just spend more time training?
That's honestly where you bring up a great point. Staying with the rimfire stuff, there seems to be like this realm or cloud of folks are trying to chase this 0.1 and 0.2 at 50 yards, and it is very entertaining. I mean, I'm obviously one of those guys that like to show groups on 50 yards as well. But realistically, these targets that we're shooting is what, 1.5, 2 MOA, and you get bigger than that at like 200 yards. I mean, what are we shooting? Like a full-size IPSC at 240 yards, for a stage course of fire? We're talking about rimfire PRF, right?
Yeah, because it's so nice to be able to go to the range and shoot like 350 rounds, 400 rounds, and know that, one, I didn't just 1/3 my barrel wear, and then the other was I don't have to reload any of that shit. You can pick up the cases and throw that shit in the bucket. It's order more when you need it.
Yeah. With the centerfire, I could say coming from a few centerfire matches is definitely harder. I don't care what anybody says. At least my own opinion saying that centerfire PRS is tougher. And I think if you are trying to be proficient in both sports, I think, at least from my experience, I've gained more, I guess, more skill set running centerfire PRS than jumping into rimfire. That's just me, though.
No, I think you're 100% right on that. I mean, I've been doing this now for 8 years, maybe like 6 to 7 in the kind of the competitive realm. And I'm not a PRS 2-day match kind of guy. I've done a handful, just not my shtick. But when I started getting kind of burnt out of centerfire, that's when I picked up the rimfire stuff. And I was like, I just need to chill, man. I still want to shoot, but I need it to feel like, shooting BB guns in the backyard when I was growing up with my buddies. Like that's what 22 long rifle feels like to me. There's no pressure, at least not at the level that I'm competing at. You know what I mean? I don't allow that kind of pressure in my life because it's just simply not important to me. But I do enjoy the 22 long rifle matches because, again, you start at 9 a.m, you're done by 2 p.m. You're just hanging out with buddies, plinking at targets, and there's just zero pressure to it whatsoever. And it is fun in that way, and easier because you're not dealing with recoil and that kind of stuff. So.
Yeah,
Womfat actually brings up a great.
I agree 100%, and Womfat hit it on the head. I haven't met him, but I've seen some of his content. But we've been saying for years, Womfat, that the guys chasing the .2 groups are generally not the ones winning the matches. There is more that matters, and that is working on your positional, just like what Chris Way does with his craft challenge. It doesn't matter if your rifle shoots .2s or .1s for that matter. If the best you can do is a 1 MOA group at 100 yards off of a tripod and then kneeling and then prone, then it's not the problem. The rifle's not the problem. You are, So, and to what Joel said, I've been competing now in all different disciplines and I kid you not, guys, it's 30-something years. Everything from 3-gun to, the rimfire to, even tried silhouette shooting, all the different disciplines. NRA high power is where I really learned back in the day, and that was shooting all iron sights. But it is easy to burn yourself out on one discipline. Even Rick, when Rick was making, Rick made some huge strides from when you look back on my channel 2.5 years ago to where he's never shot anything beyond 100 yards to where now he's going to all these PRS events, rimfire, centerfire. At the end of the year, after coming back from nationals, I said, "You're getting a little burned out, aren't you?" And he was like, "Yeah, I am." And it's very easy. Too much of anything can be a bad thing. Yeah. And so having rimfire to mix it in with centerfire, to do 3-gun, it just mixes it up enough to you don't just get burned out on one single discipline. That being said, we're just a bunch
of burned out on shooting.
We're just, you get burned out on shooting, but then again, we have, Rick and I are really blessed because where we work, the company that we work for sponsors a lot of events throughout the country. And typically when a match sponsor sponsors an event, you'll get a buy-in for 1 or 2 slots. So that helps us out tremendously because all we have to do is get there. We're not paying the match fees. And so it's really easy to just hit all these matches. But at the end of the 2 months, you haven't been home a single weekend and you were traveling from Thursday to Monday. It gets old quickly.
Yeah.
Really quickly.
It's fun.
Till it's not. Yeah. It's
cool seeing everybody when you're there, but it's like, okay, now I got to drive 3,000 miles and it's like that part gets old.
Yeah, and speaking of which, some people know, some people don't know that I work for Microtech or Microtech Defense. We actually work in the defense division, but it actually comes across my desk on which matches we sponsor. So we've always really been really big. Kind of doing my part because I was really big into 3-gun from winning nationals back in 2018. I was like, let's sponsor a lot of the military events. So everything from Duskin to Memorial 3-gun. We try to give back a lot. Snipers Unknown. Yeah. This year I want to scale that back, and we're actually going to be more involved with PRS matches, like true centerfire matches. So we are going to be a platinum sponsor for the MPA Classic coming up in the spring. That's already set. We're going to do theirs in the fall. Just because trying to spread the wealth, not just to 3-gun, but to also, be able to sponsor these matches that reaches other people, because it's no benefit to us. I mean, we can't, they can't make enough product as it is, but it's just a way of sharing with all the different disciplines. So it's good.
Boo.
Yeah.
Hedges
Who booed?
limited
He's got
trip
limited
to
trips to North
this year
Carolina.
for me.
As cheap as these tickets are for me, I might be freaking almost living there half time. So I'll probably be in your neck of the woods more often.
Yeah.
That'll be good.
That'll be good because I was just looking at some of the match schedules.
This is like the mecca of shooting. If
It really
you wanna
is.
shoot every weekend somewhere, like there's a match.
Yes.
Any discipline, pretty much.
2-gun, 3-gun, running guns, PRS, rimfire, PRS, centerfire. Living in the Southeast is a really good thing. It's not, I mean, it took you, this is your first beyond 100 yards NRL 22X match that you've seen since when? Kenny?
Right. So that the one that we had over here was like the only one that I know of for 22X match, and the only one I've ever done before that was a team one with you. So I don't know. I don't understand why the West Coast is this way. We have all this land, we have all of these ranges, but it seems like match directors just aren't getting on board. There's a lot of NRL 22, the monthly one, but not the 22Xs. There's PRS matches, but there's more and more people weeding away from that. I think is something to do with not being able to find components and reloading. So there's more guys.
It's sad because when I went on PRS Precision Rimfire series and I looked at 22 matches throughout the United States because I figured I was going to try to do another loop again and try to hit matches. And my goal is to shoot a match in every state. So not so much in 1 year, but just period. When I went to the West Coast, there wasn't crap. There was like 4 for the whole series.
And then Northeast.
Really
Northeast, like Idaho,
Maine,
all
Rhode
that
Island.
stuff.
Yeah.
I didn't even go over there. I was talking West. It was bad. I was like, this is ridiculous.
Oh, outstanding, Josh. I'm glad you're able to find one. That 457, literally, it's a feed store not even a mile from here. And walked in, found it. Fortunately, the guys at Area 419, those guys were super, super nice, sent me out a care package. And, because I've been using their stuff for years. And they sent me a bolt knob, which I put on there. You don't need to have it welded or anything else. You can just unscrew the factory bolt knob, take it off, screw theirs right on. They sent me the proper 457 mount because when I've reviewed it the first time, I had a 455 mount, which isn't exactly right. The ejection port doesn't line up exactly right. So they sent me that one and then the Arca Swiss rail. And I did not want to drill into that chassis, but I was like, I'm just going to do it perfect. And it changed the rifle completely. That being said, I did that video with Matt talking about open versus production. While you can absolutely, I think, be competitive, we'll find out next weekend. While you can absolutely be competitive with a sub $500 scope and a production, CZ MTR, there is a big difference. And that difference, and I had a lot of questions, why such fat barrels? And it's because of the balance and the solid platform that you build when you throw it up on a game changer or whatever.
Tell them what you said when you threw it.
Yeah, so we went yesterday to just try to get some dope on the CZ because it had not been shot out past 100 up until yesterday. And he was practicing on a barricade. Well, I threw that little lightweight CZ MTR junior rifle is what it felt like, because I'm used to a 20-something pound gun, and this thing weighs like nothing. I mean, you could literally hold it with one hand and set it up there, but when you set it up, it just wiggles and moves around because it doesn't have that weight to make it stable. And it's not the recoil, it's it just settling in and being perfectly balanced where I'm not trying to fight it being butt heavy. That's why we put so much weight on the barrels, is to have it completely balanced. You set it up there, you can let it go. It doesn't do a thing.
I did.
Right. So it's something to think about. And I won't shoot another production match after this. I'll go back to what I was shooting, but I'm doing it to prove a point. That's that you can definitely be competitive with
it's a great shooting rifle.
With a regular rifle. Yep. I need a haircut. Yeah, I do.
Especially for a junior that can't really pick up a stupid 20-pound rifle.
It's what I had to do with Ella. I couldn't go with a heavy profile, and she constantly fought that rifle being butt heavy, but I couldn't make it any heavier for her.
Yeah.
Sure, I can say that the weight does help you out get a more stable position. Like I noticed, because I got the last Rimx or 2 Rimx's that I have, I got one that's a carbon fiber, completely carbon fiber barrel and all that, and then this one I'm taking over to you guys is a 20-pound rifle, and those guys are all like, "Oh, that 20-pound rifle is going to suck on that positional stage," which it kind of did, but it also did help me out standing. Like for some reason, that heavier rifle, at least for me, I don't know what it is, but I find myself swaying less with a heavier rifle than compared to like a 16 or 12-pound rifle. I don't know what you guys have for opinion.
Yeah, and Roper Boy, just really quickly, we pretty much only sponsor these large matches. We did do a lot for local matches and these smaller places that were trying to get started. Because when someone introduces, I remember when Dick started, Blackwatch down there, just looking for sponsors, that's a good time to hit one up. But once you're established, then we kind of go to the bigger matches. You're going to reach more people. Last year, this year we did a GSSF match, which the exposure to that was unbelievable. I mean, you're talking about instead of, reaching 200 or 300 competitors, now you're talking thousands of competitors.
That's the Glock,
right? Yeah.
For those of you that. Yeah, and like Dick had just said, he has an NRL 22X match on the 15th of April called the Taxman. A lot of good shooters are showing up to that. A lot of people are coming in from all over the place. I think there's a few spots available, so definitely if you guys are in the area, there's a lot of people coming from out of state.
I thought about signing up for that match when I saw it. You probably did sign up.
We can't. We got
NRA, and that's the reason is we have a conflict of scheduling on that. I'm either going to be out of the country or I'm going to be at the NRA convention, one of the two. Either way, I can't shoot that match. Otherwise, I would have went down there, especially because I'm tired of the cold right now. That's why I have long hair. I grow it out in the winter.
Hey, are you
if you're out of the country? I'm going to shoot.
Yeah.
Are you guys tracking with? There's a new range right outside of Little Rock called Twisted Barrel Precision. You guys familiar with that at all?
I think I saw some on Facebook on that.
Okay. They've been around probably a little over a year. Been doing centerfire stuff. This will be, I think, their first year of actually offering 2-day national PRS type matches. But one of the guys that makes videos for me on the Precision Rifle Network, Justin Harrell, if anybody's watched any of his videos, that's his home range. And he just got voluntold, I think, to head up the 22 long rifle stuff at their range. And, they've got out to 2 miles, I believe, or maybe it's not quite that. Maybe it's 2,000 yards, but they've got a significant distance out there, and they're going to be running all manner of 22 long rifle matches this year, I'm told. So might be something to
where's
keep. It's in Missouri, right?
No. Little Rock, Arkansas.
Oh, Arkansas. Okay.
Yeah, that's
Arkansas.
Bill Clinton's hometown, isn't it?
Little Rock, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
More reason not to go. And we got Jordan Spradley on here. He's actually with Global Ordnance.
Jordan.
Yeah, so, Global Ordnance, I'm going to give them a plug because
Hell yeah,
I do
awesome.
know that they had just gotten a whole bunch of RWS ammo in stock. And, they're an online store. You can buy 9mm from them and everything else. Big shout out to those guys because they actually sent us 9mm to be able to give you some of those subgun reviews.
Hey, Bellum. Their Bellum ammo, the 124.
Works well.
Full Metal Jacket shit works.
Yeah, and so their prices are very, very reasonable.
Buckets now.
Yeah.
I need to actually get some of that shit.
With regards to what's coming up this year, I'm sure Rick and I are going to still run some more long-range classes. That we're doing that at Big Ivy. We also are looking to do a few rimfire matches that are not going to be as difficult as the first one we put on. And then other than that, we'll be shooting quite a bit. Yeah, that first one we put on was it was a little too difficult. I hate to say that, but it was too difficult. It was. And we did have a lot of feedback from that, and we will grow off of that feedback. But we wanted to make the first one pretty tough. We didn't realize how much negative feedback we were going to get on how tough it was. We had people that left because they said it was too hard. Left the match.
It was tough. But everybody had to shoot the same match.
And they loved it.
There were some that loved it. Yeah. Some of them were like, this is the greatest shit ever. And then we had
some that just left. They were just like, this is too hard.
They said there's a southern word called F all y'all.
Yeah, Jordan said they just got 147s in as well. And I can't do a link or anything. Maybe if you want to type that in, but it was just Global Ordnance out of Florida. They are the distributor for Grand Power Strybog. And so,
Lots of stuff.
yeah, big shout out to them for that. And then what's new for you, Josh? What are you planning on doing this year? Or Joel?
Yeah, so for me, I'm going to be switching focus a little bit more to the field matches, the team sniper type matches. And so
Nice.
you probably see quite a bit more gas gun type footage on PRN this year. Justin is still going to be doing content for me on kind of just the review side of things. A lot of the review products that are being sent to me, I'm sending to him, and he's going to be doing my reviews. And then I also brought on a guy that I'm actually schooling up right now to try to get him kind of on a level with the camera work and the lighting and audio and camera work, so that it looks.
Oh
decent
shit!
for the
Next time
channel.
we see you, it's just gonna be mayhem.
Yeah,
it's gonna be
so
lights, camera, action. You're gonna have the guy with the thing, and all sorts of shit gonna happen. That's awesome.
He's a young guy as far as I'm concerned. I think he's like in his low 30s, which means he's a young guy to me. But he's going to be doing reloading stuff pretty much exclusively. So adding that to the channel this year too. And then as far as matches are concerned, my first match of the year is going to be here in Missouri. Isaiah Curtis is putting on the NRL Hunter match, and he's about an hour north of me. So that's an easy one. I'll check that one off. And then we're probably looking at just local or regional center fire matches throughout the summer. And then in the fall, we've got Team Safari again, and that's kind of how I'll end it out.
Nice.
Great match for sure. That's the one thing the East Coast doesn't have is the damn hunter matches. Like,
Yeah, I mean, we do. There is that one that's this month, I think, in Arena. It's this month or next month, but I'm not going to be able to make that. And then I also noticed that SIG does their SIG match, and there's one coming up in Kentucky. It's Kentucky, isn't it?
SIG?
Yeah, the eye precision, the eagle eye precision, not his.
Yeah.
They're actually doing a SIG match, which they don't have all the different categories. What they have is your rifle has to be 16 pounds or less. And as long as you're under 3,200 feet per second, but I think it's the SIG NRL Hunter, the SIG Hunter series or something. And I think it's really there to promote the SIG Cross because it easily makes the weight because it's so lightweight. But that was just a little too far for us to travel, or at least it is for me anyway, this time of year. But yeah, some exciting stuff coming up this year. How about you, Kenny? Just going to shoot a lot of matches?
Well, in case folks don't know, I'm actually building rifles full time, and this year I'm definitely want to get more into the competitive side of things. So I know what works and what doesn't. So I'm definitely going to be reaching out to a lot more matches, primarily probably in your region. The 22s are what I primarily built, so I'm going to be focusing this year, not chasing points, but definitely going to more of these 22 matches. If it takes me moving or traveling out of state, I'm definitely going to do that. There's something that just popped up, which is that competition dynamics. I just looked at it. It's at Benson, Arizona. It's a new style match, but it's 30 to 60 mile ruck match in 36 hours. I don't think I'm fit for
have
that.
fun with that.
Considering something, yeah, I'm considering something like that, or just getting more into these sniper challenges. Like we got that match coming up in Florida. I'm really excited for. So, that's pretty much for my game.
Oh, the Accuracy International one.
Yeah, we are all shooting that one down in Florida, and that is going to be March 13, 14, 15, or something like that. It's like March 14, 15, 16. And that's more of a sniper match than a PRS match. So that'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it'll be different than PRS.
Yeah.
I just want to get more into other shooting disciplines. Like, like you're saying, you just become a more rounded person, and your skill sets, just knowing how to operate a pistol or just certain things on this 2-gun competition does translate to other style of shooting. Like, just these CD matches, there's these assault courses. If you don't know how to operate a pistol, that can hurt you quite a bit. So I want to
quite a bit.
get into everything.
Yeah.
Do you guys see that
Unfortunately, the last match we went to, there was a team match. They didn't have enough emphasis on pistol shooting. So, so it sucked for the guys that can shoot a pistol well.
You see the competition dynamics just changed the rules for this year on pistols?
Yeah, the red dot. Yeah,
red dot.
And you could have compensators. You can go out there with a full race gun.
But you know what that means? That means they're going to increase the distance.
Yes,
of
they're going to
pistol
go
shots.
100,
For
100
sure.
yards. Yeah.
Yep.
Well,
Yeah,
that's
well,
good, man.
their assault
Yeah.
courses have always played into our favor, whether I was shooting it with Rick or
Yeah.
shooting it with Kenny, because we're pretty darn good pistol shots. I mean, without sounding bad, I mean, we definitely know our way around a pistol. And they do have longer shots anyway, but if they do add the dots, yeah, they'll definitely put those targets out even further.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because 50-yard shots are not uncommon on little third IPSCs for speed, and they make it so that you and your partner have to hit multiple ones multiple times, and if somebody misses, you got to make that up. I mean, so you both have to be very proficient with that, or somebody's running or grabbing something if they miss.
Jordan, that one's called
Right.
Accuracy International.
The Accuracy International Classic.
Classic. That's what
Yep.
it is.
And it's in B, Florida. It's Baker, Florida. And that'll actually that's put on by Altus, the shirt that Joel's got on.
Ta-da.
And that'll be a good match. For that match, I will actually be shooting a non-Desert Precision Gunworks rifle, but it's part of a video series that I'm going to do on it. And it's going to be a Falcor Defense. I've never shot one. I've played with them, but I specifically asked two guys that are well known in the industry, and one of them's actually right there below you on the screen. I asked Kenny, I was like, what is one of the smoothest actions you've ever felt? And he said a Falcor Defense. And I was like, aren't they the guys that make big bore ARs? And he was like, yeah, well, that's where they got started, but you got to check out their actions. And then I asked someone else who's an editor for a very large magazine. He goes, you need to try out a Falcor. So I was like, wait a minute. I've had two of these guys tell me this, and I see Joel up there shaking his head, so he must know something about them.
Yeah, back when I made videos for the firearm blog, this has been 3 or 4 years ago now, they sent us one of the I think it was a 300 Win Mag, maybe large frame AR for a review, and I did a video on it, and it was decent. It had a few malfunctions that I chalked up to magazine issues, and I didn't have any other magazines to change that fact. But it was a great rifle, very accurate, nice.
So that's how I knew them, but I didn't know they were making a smoothest action ever bolt gun. That's what I keep hearing from these guys. It's like glass. And so at SHOT Show, I went and talked to them. We had already had some conversation beforehand, and literally their actions are the smoothest I've ever felt, ever. So they have the rifle shipping out this week. We're doing that one in 6 Creedmoor. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to review the rifle, and then I'm going to shoot it at the Accuracy International Classic. I'm not taking the AI out there just to see how it does, and I'll probably send the rifle back to them. So that's what I'm doing, trying to get off of all these strikes and everything.
Have a good day, Wolfat.
Did you get any strikes or anything, Joel?
I have not yet, but I've got my eye on several of my old videos. I'm fairly certain they'll find them eventually.
Yeah. I got Kenny. You got one.
I'm sitting on 1 strike right now. That's why I haven't uploaded a video.
I got 0, but when you only have 1 subscriber, you don't have to worry about it.
All right, so guys, if you haven't subscribed to Is Your Six Cover, hit that subscribe button. I think they were going after, I don't even know who, but I know they hit me hard. They hit a lot of the guys with suppressor content. They raked us over the coals. And so, like Wednesday, when my strike wore out, I was like, I'm going to upload this video and just send it out. But it was like, dang, you got to be kidding.
And that's the problem. I've been doing this. I have like 1,800 videos.
Yep.
So I'm under the assumption that I'm just like, I don't know. I need to go back because I can instantly just get 3. I'm 100% guaranteed of that if they were to look hard enough. But
there's been several channels that have been completely deleted.
Yeah,
just gone.
Yeah. Kit Badger and a couple of the other ones. Now Coleman, real quick, I have been out to Cameo. I actually did a video on that place. They gave me a full tour of the facility when I was out with the family for 2 weeks on the road, and that is an unbelievable complex. I know Chris Way has run a couple of events out there, but yeah, nice facility.
yeah, for sure.
Well, that's all I've got.
I think we wrapped it up. We're right at 1 hour and 30 minutes, which is perfect timing.
Yep.
For most of our videos. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the content, If you haven't subscribed to any of these guys, definitely do so. And appreciate you showing up. I think everybody, you got anything else to say, anybody, before we get out of here?
China sucks.
Yeah.
Hot air balloons rock.
Yeah.
And then they fall down. All right. You guys have a great night. Stay safe. See you on the next one. Appreciate
All right,
it.
see ya.
You got the button?
Yeah. You guys stay on.
Yeah, you guys can stay here.